So you want to be a head coach. Here's my four best tips for your first head coaching interview. Hey, coaches, got a fantastic guest today. Tony Dickey is a high school coach out. A football coach out in Texas. Tony is coached college, high school, and middle school, and he hit me up and asked me to talk a little bit about interview stuff. And I've been wanting to put an interview video together, so I thought it was a perfect time. So Tony's on with us. And after we talk interview stuff, we're gonna talk some offensive stuff. But Tony, appreciate you being here, man. We've been trying to hook up for a couple days. I appreciate you being patient and working with me on it. But I'm excited about talking about this topic. You're in the Houston area, correct?
Yes, sir.
Awesome, awesome, and awesome football out there. Obviously, I think everyone in the whole country always talks about Texas football. So it's good to have you on here. Uh, your question, you remember your question was just basically any ideas on interviewing or any tips for interviews?
Anybody going for their first time to be a head coach, what are some things to keep in mind? Uh, what are some things to maybe have in the interview? Things that, obviously you have some kind of pamphlet you might hand to all the people that are interviewing you, but what are some good things to have in there that you could bring to the program that would make it better, help you kind of stand out from the others? Um, Things that you might not have thought about, that a lot of first year coaches typically don't think about. And then, 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, they bring something in that might help the overall scheme or make the program better. If they have to oversee all the sports, just any advice you have to offer.
And that's perfect. That's a perfect lead into it, and you worded that really well. I've got four, and I guess let me give you a little history on it before used to be I'm going back 20, 30 years now. Like I remember walking in with a VHS tape. Used to be put a big highlight video together, and then it was make sure you come in with a big program book, so you'd walk in there with this big binder full of everything in your program. Those were like the big things back in the day. But here's where I've gotten to, and I think these are a couple tips that can help guys that are going after that first head job. Is the first one is this, and you just talking to you briefly, I bet you've already thought this through, but lock in on your philosophy, meaning lock in on from the very back. See, when you're in an interview, for the most part, they don't want to talk about X's and O's. If you say, "Oh, I'm an air raid guy and we run 3-4," that's about all the X's and O's you're going to be talking about. Maybe if there's a former football coach in there, they'll pull you off to the side afterward and you guys might talk a few X's and O's, but there's going to be almost no X's and O's going on in a head coaching interview. Everything is going to be about philosophy. Everything is going to be about culture. Everything is going to be about molding kids and your structure and organization of the program. That's the whole interview is going to be about that. So lock in on your philosophy. And when I'm talking about philosophy, I'm talking about why are you a coach? Why did you become a coach in the first place? And being able to articulate that in a very simple and clear manner. Why are you a coach, and why are you a football coach, and why is this important? To me, that's where everything starts, is being able to articulate that philosophy very succinctly and clearly. And remember, you're in a you're selling yourself. So being able to word it in an exciting way is a big deal. But being very clear on it, because 9 out of 10, and I don't know, if I said tell me your philosophy, can you tell me right now?
Yeah. As a coach, just in general, the kind of the 3 C's. And I stole this from Urban Meyer because I've always kind of thought this way. I just didn't have it organized like that. And he called it character, competency, and connection. And I agreed with it 100%. And I said, that is my philosophy. Character, showing up every day, uh, on time, dress the way you're supposed to, treat them right, uh, show them how to handle adversity when adversity shows up. Calm, cool, collective, competency. Put it in a way where they can understand it, where they ain't got to think about it so much. That's kind of a Todd Dodge adage is, and I don't know if you know who that is. I'm sure
Oh
you
yeah.
do because I
Yep.
mean he was a Texas high school guy, but he's kind of
Right.
become no national. Anyways,
Mhm.
he talked about uh, teaching in a way where they don't have to think about it, and that's how they understand it. And that's how if you understand something, you can teach in a way where they can try to pick it up the first time and they don't have to think about it. So competency, coaching what you know, and then connection, making it more than just about football. Or if it's a basketball thing, making it more about that and be generally interested in their lives and getting them ready for their next endeavors. So if it's middle school, we're trying to get them ready for their freshman year of high school. High school, we're trying to get them ready for college or when they get out onto their career if they don't go to college, and understand that sports is a tool for setting them up for the future, and yeah, you might have a handful of kids that make it professionally, but I mean, I think what's the percentage, 1% or something of going pro in any sport? I mean, I don't know. I'm sure it's higher or lower than that, but I mean, that's more or less my philosophy.
That's perfect, and I knew just from the questions you sent me and the way you phrased it that you'd have a pretty good handle on your philosophy. Now, do that again, videotape it, and then refine it. Make it smoother and smoother and smoother. But I like the structure and I like the way. But I'd say half the guys your age they can't succinctly explain their philosophy. So that's a big you're already a step ahead, but now you got to think you're going in there against a 20-year veteran who's won a state championship. Now you got to sell yourself versus him. So videotape yourself doing it and refine it, make it even tighter, make it even better, and even to the point where I can explain my your elevator pitch, from the time we get from the first floor to the fifth floor. I can explain to you what my philosophy is about being a coach and why it's so important to me. And so you're well on your way on that one, but just tighten it down and videotape yourself doing it. Uh, and everyone who watches this channel knows what I'm about to say. I've noticed videotaping myself. I use the filler ah. I'll give a bunch of ahs all the time, and you're trying to get rid of all that stuff and just tighten it down when you're doing it. Second one, put your entire plan on paper, and I know we all do it, but have everything on paper. And I think this is why it's even good for veteran coaches to go after interviews, is because it forces you to write everything down, get everything on paper, refine everything, and then once you get it on paper, shrink it. Make it more tighten it up to the point where there's no filler in there. Like it's not a college paper where we had to do 14 pages or 3,000 words. There's not, we want it to be smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where you might be able to hand them one sheet of paper and it's on the front and back. You're smiling. You already have that.
Well, I was in the back of my mind, I was thinking of Mike Leach a little bit. I don't know if that's a better way to say that or not. Because people would always brag about how all his stuff was always on one sheet of paper. Even his
Talking
offense.
about his
Which,
call sheet, his little index card call sheet. Yeah. But
yeah,
just the more it used to be, I mean, you'd walk into an interview with something this thick and you'd hand everyone, well, no one's going to look at that. It's too much. There's too much stuff, but it helps you to organize everything, get it on paper, but then condense it and shrink it down and tighten it up and make it smaller and smaller. And if you can get to the point where you're handing them one sheet of paper, or you're handing them two sheets of paper, and your entire program is encapsulated in those two sheets of paper, now you got something that they're actually, if they liked you in the interview, now when they're going through it tonight, when the committee's together, or if it's just one principal deciding, now he can go back through and look at that condensed sheet of your program, and he's going to recall things you said, and then he's going to decide, yeah, this guy, he's organized. I liked what he said in the interview. And I really like the way he's got it organized here on paper. So it just gives you it won't help you during the interview, but it'll help you after the interview when they're reviewing it in their head. All right, here's our top three. Now, how are we going to decide from our top three? Well, this guy talked good, but this guy talked good and he had it down on paper. And here it is right here. And it makes sense when I'm going through it, so, it's a business plan. When I'm going through it, it looks like a business plan. So I just think that always gives you a huge advantage over those big, thick notebooks that most guys walk in and hand out. And, uh, and when you start getting those big, thick notebooks, I think we start filling, like, well, if it's 20 pages, we need to make it 30 pages. We start adding stuff that we need to do the opposite. We need to shrink it, not add to it. The third one is, all right, you're going to get a question sometimes that says, what do you bring? What would you bring to this position? And to me, that's a real, sometimes there's BS questions in the interview, but sometimes there's a real questions. So what are your strengths? No matter what job we're talking about, what are the three things that you bring that probably no one else is bringing? Or you bring, but you're bringing it with such passion that you're a better candidate than anyone else that comes through that door. What is it? What are your big strengths that you're bringing into that interview that you're going to bring into this job? And putting some time down to really think through that. Here's why. Here's why I'm the right guy. And it's because of one, two, and three. These three things set me apart from everyone else. And sometimes it takes some time thinking through that. And again, just like your first one on philosophy, uh, and then being able to refine it and making it clear. And I'll give you an example. I uh, I was one of the first guys who really started selling culture. That, hey, we're going to come in and we're going to create a culture, a championship culture, and once we build champions, we'll win championships. Well, I was talking to people who had never heard the term culture before. So I was struggling to explain this to them. Well, what am I talking about? When I'm talking about building culture, they're looking for a football coach, and I'm walking in talking about building culture. There was this wide gap between what I wanted to do and how I was going to present it to them to make it understandable in something. Sometimes you walk in and they'll say, all right, everyone gets 30 minutes. Well, heck, you can ask me, introduce yourself, and it'll take more than 30 minutes sometimes. So, how am I going to get this concept across to them clearly in a short enough amount of time that we have time for something else? Like I had one interview, and they asked the first question. I started talking about culture, and it went the whole interview. We never got off that. That was the whole interview, and I was lucky. The principal was a buddy of mine, and he let me video the interview. So I walked out of there. I had a video of the actual interview, and uh, and all the stuff I said was good stuff. But when I talked to my buddy afterward, he said, "You realize no one else ever asked another question. That it took so long talking about culture that we never got to any other questions." So being able to figure out, all right, here's my big three things. Here's the three things that make me different. Now, how do I communicate that as succinctly as possible in a clear enough way, a simple way that it makes sense to them, and that it has some pizzazz to it that they're wanting to buy me over. Remember, everyone that walks in there is going to be a pretty dang good coach, or they wouldn't be walking in.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
the advantage is, and there'll be my fourth point. Your advantage would be all of them are going to be good coaches, but only a few of them are going to be good interview guys. And that's where your advantage can come. So my last one is this, and I think this is gigantic because of what I just said. Everyone walking in that room is a good coach, but not everyone's a good interview guy. This concept of there's going to be home run questions. When you walk into an interview, especially if it's a panel, there's going to be a couple goofball questions. some guy on the panel is going to ask you some hypothetical question that don't make any sense. He's trying to trick you up, and I usually just smile and say, please tell me that's never happened in real life, because it's such a crazy hypothetical. Well, you can't prepare for a crazy hypothetical, but there are certain questions that everyone's going to ask. You got to be ready. Though to me, those are the fastball straight down the middle of the plate, but it's only going about 60 miles an hour. So you got to be able to launch on it. You got to know that question is coming, and you got to be able to launch it. I mean, that has to be an out of the park home run when that question comes, because it's coming, and there's probably three, four, five of those kind of questions. Now your job is to figure out, well, what are those five questions? And then it's like, I got this term called script the scriptable, meaning, there's certain situations like we know there's going to be the first play of the game. We know there's going to be the first play of the game, so we can script that one, right? We ain't got to come up with that one off the top of our head. We know there's going to be a third and long, so we can script that one, right? We know that one's coming, so we can be ready for it. There's going to be a third and one or a fourth and one. Well, we know that one's coming, so we can be ready for it. You know what I'm saying? Scripting ahead of time. So we know these four, three, four, five questions. We know they're coming, so we can script for them. We can be ready. We can be teed up, and when that pitch comes down the plate, we can knock it out of the park. So, what are those questions? There's gonna be three, four of them. What are those questions? First one, can you tell us about yourself? Well, what are they wanting to know there when they ask that question? Can you tell us about yourself? They're not really wanting to know where you went to middle school. They're really wanting to know the something important about you. So that's a very scriptable where you can say, my name, I went to college here, but here's what's important, and you can launch into whatever your selling point is. Could go back to those three things that make you special out of everyone else. Here's what's important about me, and bam, there's your first home run. So the first question, you're knocking it out of the park. And I always talk about, when I'm in an interview, I want to own the room. When I'm in there, I want to own the room. I want them, when I walk out of there, I want them to say, wow, so how do I do that? Well, I'm going to own that first question. I know that first question's coming, and I'm going to be ready for it. And when they throw it, I'm going to knock it out of the park. Then they're going to end with, uh, do you have any questions for us? Well, that's a very scriptable, because guys who aren't ready, they're going to say, well, how much does it pay? They're going to say something, they're going to have some dumb, but that's not a time for a dumb question. That's a time for, well, obviously we want to know time frames, when, how fast is the process going to go? But here's a more important one. What does success look like to you? What would success in this position look like to you in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years? Get them to give you what they think success looks like. And how closely does that match what your picture looks like and what you've just been spending, 30 or an hour selling. So I think that's a great closer, because now you're getting them to tell you what they think it's supposed to look like. And then there's multiple questions in between there. One of them could be as simple as, well, what makes you a superior candidate? There's going to be some question like that comes up, and it might not be worded exactly like that, but it's coming. There's some kind of question in that family of questions, and you got to be ready. You got to launch on it. That's where you got your three. Here's what makes me better. Here's what makes me different. Here's what makes me the guy. That's when you launch into it. And that's a rehearsed, scripted, prepared answer where you knock it out of the dang park. So there's three. The tell us about yourselves coming. The what makes you the best candidate. And do you have any questions at the end? Those three are coming. Then most of the time you're gonna have tell us your a strength, or tell us a weakness. Well, you can prepare. There's going to be some kind of weakness question in there. We'll prepare an answer for that one. So now you got 4 questions loaded up, ready to hit. You're going to hit 4 home runs in that interview right out the gate, and then you're gonna leave them with something in writing that summarizes how you build the program. So now they got something. If they liked you, if they don't like you, then it don't matter. But if they liked you, now you've left something in their hands that they're going to be able to review, go back and see, oh yeah, I remember when he talked about that. Oh yeah, this makes sense. Now you got something for them, some food for some homework for them if they liked you. So those are my big four. And the questions ones, the script in your answer to the big questions and being able to knock them out of the park. I think that's the biggest one. That gives you a first question home run, that gives you a last question home run, and that gives you 2 questions in the middle of the interview that are home runs. You can't prepare for the crazy what if question, but you can definitely prepare for those four and just be ready to launch on them. And I'm talking about videotape yourself, practice it, get it, fine tune it where there's no uhs and there's no stuttering and there's no thinking about you. When you get that question, it boom, you're on and you launch into that answer. I think that gives you a huge advantage over everyone else because like I started with, because everyone in those interviews, everyone who comes in is going to be a great football coach, but they're not all going to be great interview guys.